Yeah, we'll take 5 to 10 minutes and share with our friends how God delivered Valentine, the pastor's son here in Pavlograd. And Valentine's going to share in Ukrainian as it'll flow better, although he speaks really good English.
Yeah, not really good, but a little bit.
Yeah. And then what we'll have, and you'll see this on the videos, we'll have subtitles. So Valentine, yesterday you shared your testimony with me. It really touched my heart. And it touched my heart for a few reasons, which I talked about. Most of all, because you were glorifying God every step of the way. And you saw God's hand on your life and how he saved you in a very, well, as you'll explain, very difficult situation. So I really appreciate it. Why don't you share with my friends in the United States, pastors and leaders, what it's like on the front line and how the Lord delivered you.
Hello, dear brothers, sisters, pastor of the United States of America. I want to witness God's glory that was manifested in my life during warfare. Before the war, I served as a youth leader in our church, doing ministry and helping people. However, when the large-scale war erupted, I decided to defend our homeland, people, our church, and so I went to war. When I joined the armed forces of Ukraine, they sent me to the special unit called Special Ops Forces of Ukraine. We were mostly doing some intel tasks and other types of operations on the front line. And while there, I kept telling people about God, my faith in Him, and always mentioning one thing: I'll make it out alive. I never stopped sharing about Jesus Christ, and today I want to witness what happened to me last year, August 4, 2022, when our unit got a task to get to the Pisky settlement on the outskirts of Donetsk, because our intel reported that Russian armored vehicles broke through our positions in that area. And they really broke through and started to heavy shell that settlement, and somewhere in that area our infantry was still defending some positions. They tried to restrain the enemy and we went there to join efforts with them. Before that, I had already had successful operations and fights, but this was a big one. That operation was meant to be difficult because of heavy artillery shelling. Some people even calculated that there were around 6,000 explosions a day in that small settlement. So once I ended up there, I could personally confirm those calculations. Sometimes the silence could only last for 10 seconds, and then again explosions. Shelling continued in that settlement. Always explosions, fire, and so on. Maybe at night, for 2 hours, there was no shelling, but then again, around 5 in the morning, you could hear the same thing. So once there, we helped the local infantry to defend the settlement for 2 days, and after that the infantry, for some reason, refused to leave basements and shelters because shelling reached its peak. For the first time in my life, I saw tens of dead bodies, and they really looked like mummies, and there was that bad smell and so on. Honestly, you could feel the atmosphere of death there. That death atmosphere was simply in the air. I felt it. And so our commander told us to go and defend the so-called path of life. Those who have been following the Ukrainian news from 2014 know that there is a path from Donetsk airport called the path of life. And when our soldiers were defending this airport back in 2014, this path was used to supply ammunition to the defenders. So this very path was under attack and the enemy's armored vehicles were marching on it, and that's why our commander ordered us to go and keep that road at least till the morning, so that these vehicles stop at some point and our artillery could see and destroy it. Unfortunately, all infantry refused to go and conduct defensive operations, so our group, 8 men in total, went there. Once we heard the sound of the engines, I mean tanks, APCs, and other vehicles. I'm not sure how many were there. We knew we were going to fight anyway, and delay their movement. On that operation, I worked as a machine gunner, and my other fellow soldier as a grenade launcher. He was the one to fire first. 3 of us took position inside the hangar. Other 5 guys took positions outside in an ambush. So, however, when Russians started moving, they began shooting at every building they saw, both tanks and artillery. Artillery was actually firing from Donetsk itself, and so when it all started, Russians also shot at our hangar, where there were 3 of us. And as a result of that, we all ended up on the piles of concrete, bricks, and other debris. I know that probably I lost consciousness because when I was trying to recall all these events, I remember poor sight. Everything seemed white to me, so the chances are I got hit right in my head. I couldn't move, and when I got my sight back, I could see that I'm covered by debris up to my neck, and I'm stuck. No chance to move, absolutely no chance. So I cannot move. I just couldn't move at that moment. Then on the left, I heard my fellow soldier crying, "Help, help!" On the right, I heard the voice of my other fellow soldier, but he was not even trying to say a word. It was the cry of agony. He was completely covered by that debris. So I knew right away that I need to help them. So I tried to move like this to try to get out of that debris trap. No success. Then I tried to move like a worm, and did maybe 50 of such moves, and finally I could feel that I'm actually getting out. And step by step. Not sure how much time it took me to get out of the debris, but when I stood to my feet, I could feel pain in my toes. Just for you to understand, it's been a year so far, and only now bruises started to disappear from my toes. So I was heavily damaged, and but somehow I managed to find my gun, or maybe I just kept holding it in my arms. I don't remember. Again, when I heard the voice of the soldier on the left, I knew I need to start to move in this direction, but Russian tank fired one more time, and the blast wave threw me away. Not sure how far, but I was thrown away. I remember that I was thrown away, and my gun fell somewhere, and there was no more voice of the soldier on the left, because debris covered him completely. I knew I needed to get out of this. I was the only one alive from my group. I couldn't return to the same path, since our commander told us earlier that the path and buildings nearby were taken by the enemy, so I could get quickly killed. Being completely disoriented, with my left collarbone being broken, I decided to go to the opposite direction. And probably thanks to adrenaline, I didn't feel the pain at once, but when I kept walking, I could feel that pain became obvious, and at some point I couldn't move my hand freely anymore. Besides, there was a big fragment in my right hand, and like a huge fragment. And praise God, although it was in my right hand, it didn't break my bone right away. I mean, it almost reached the bone and stopped there. By the way, there were also fragments in my spine. My head was aching because of the heavy heat and shell shock. I remember when I was leaving the hangar, the tank probably fired 5 times in total. And you know, when the tank fires first, you hear some sound from the radio, and then something like a whistle, and so all this music was playing in my ears. 5 shots. I was wearing my active headphones to protect my ears, but when the blast wave hit me, it simply threw my headphones away and they broke in half. I have pictures which I can attach to this video. So just to remind, I was leaving the hangar being wounded, shell-shocked, both arms not operating, having pain in my spine and completely disoriented. The biggest thing, however, that scared me the most at that moment was the fact that I'm completely alone. Of course, right away I reminded myself that although it may seem that I was alone, in fact I wasn't. Jesus was always with me. When I was walking, I began to pray and ask the Lord to, Lord, save my life. Of course, I had questions in my head. So, is this it? Is this where your life is gonna end? You're 23, still not married, no kids, no nothing, you know? And then I told myself, no. You're gonna get out of this with God's help. And I'll make it. I'll just make it. Another type of thoughts also attacked my mind. Maybe better kill myself with a grenade right now. And you may ask why. There are several reasons for that. First of all, the commander in our unit told us up front that it is forbidden for special ops forces to surrender, because we all know some sensitive information, and the enemy would definitely torture us all. Secondly, when Russians started to invade our country back in 2014, since then they knew my father's pro-Ukrainian position, and in 2022, right after occupation of Kherson and Enerhodar, Russians started to come to churches and inquire about my father, Andriy Nevolin. Where is he? Is his son really fighting? It means like that they knew everything about our family, and I clearly understood that if I were taken captive, they would start blackmailing my parents, and I definitely would not want that to happen. Thirdly, 2 weeks before our military operation, a video appeared on the internet from Privilna village in the Luhansk region, where Russians took captive one of Ukrainian soldiers and they castrated him using a simple clerical knife. Then they tied him up to the vehicle and dragged the body on the road. Seeing these absolutely barbaric tortures, I knew in my heart that I don't want to experience such things, so I really thought to kill myself with a grenade. Nevertheless, there was something in my heart that kept telling me that I'll stay alive and make it out. So I moved on and kept praying with my mind, because praying with my lips was very physically difficult. And so I was walking without any clear direction, and I saw a trench. So I jumped into that trench and felt like I really want to sleep. Just imagining when you worked hard whole day without any rest, and you're about to fall asleep like real quick. That was my condition. I was thinking maybe I'll sleep like for 5 minutes, then wake up and continue to walk. I mean, if you're in the trench, you're safe, right? but we were taught that if a soldier is in stress and full of adrenaline and they want to sleep, they can fall in a very deep sleep phase. The heart stops for some time and may not start up again. So I had a clear understanding that I may never wake up from my sleep. So I got out of the trench and continued my walk. I believe that my mind was operating upon the instinct of self-preservation. I badly wanted to drink some water and find Ukrainian soldiers, my fellow soldiers. Don't forget, I was completely alone in the gray area of the front line. This means I could be easily killed by both the enemy and Ukrainian soldiers. While I was walking, I heard that a drone was, flying over my head. It was buzzing, and I know this sound because I was studying to become a drone operator. I had one actually called Mavic 3. Besides, I learned how to throw a grenade from it, so if this drone was hunting for me, it could simply fly a little lower and throw one at myself. So I saw a bush nearby and jumped into it to hide myself. Sitting there and praying to God, please, God, keep me safe. Again, I had no idea whose drone was that one, the enemy's or ours. And it was really scary to be on your own, wounded, and hearing that sound of the approaching drone. The moment I heard that the drone was flying away, I jumped out of the bush and moved on. In front of me there was breastwork, so I decided to use it as a shelter. And the moment I hid myself behind it, I heard rounds of large caliber machine gun, probably an APC shooting at me. This was definitely not a soldier shooting at me with his gun, and I know the sound. It was a large caliber, and bullets were flying very close to my head. I was, lying there and thinking, is this a movie or something? Something's not real, definitely. It's been like the first time in my life I've been in such a situation when you're completely alone, so I just kept waiting for the shooting to stop. The machine gun stopped. I used all the strength that remained to make myself stand on the feet. At that point, I had no idea where to go next. On the right, there was an open field that probably would lead me to Donetsk, while on the left, there was a path to 5-story buildings, some apartment block area. Suddenly, I realized that I took my phone with me. Not this one. I had an iPhone 11 at that moment. And I was like, maybe a miracle's gonna happen. I'll have some mobile carrier coverage. Just for you to have context, Pisky settlement is located 1 kilometer away from Donetsk, and my location was like 5 meters away from the Donetsk airport. And if you know something about electromagnetic warfare, EW, you would know that in my area all types of connection were completely jammed. It was impossible even to get at least some coverage, and it's also a problematic environment for drone operators because GPS signals are usually weak. But again, I expected a miracle to happen. Can you imagine? I look at my phone screen and see all horizontal bars of the carrier, which means 100% coverage. Vodafone carrier, all horizontal bars available. I knew it was my opportunity to make it out alive, so I called my commander and turned on speaker because it was difficult for me to lift the phone to my ear. I said, I'm alive, please get me out of here. He was like, Val, stay strong, we're gonna do something. So I was like, please, show me the way out. So he asked for my exact location, and I looked around. I told him that there's a boiler house tower. If you've ever been to Ukraine, you would see such red brick towers here. It was half broken, so I told him that I'm standing in front of this tower, and my commander asked me to stay on the line. In a minute, he called me back. To be honest, I don't even remember if he called me back or I was just staying on the line. Just can't remember. So he told me, go the opposite direction from that tower. There must have been a 5-story building, and that's where our soldiers were. So that was the only call I could make. And I started moving in that direction, and right in front of me was that same road that I had to defend, and now I had to cross it. Later understood that when I was leaving the hangar, I basically moved 1 kilometer, maybe 1 kilometer away from that road, and the armored vehicles could still be moving that same road, and we didn't succeed in defending that road, and now I had to cross it. While I was there thinking, I started to hear shots fired at me from behind. Bullets started to fly close to me. I know this sound. We've been on the intel operations numerous times, gathering data and killing the enemy. So I quickly realized that they are shooting at me. Just like they train us in the army, there is a term, contact at 6. So contact at 12 means that the enemy is in front of you, while contact at 6 right behind you. So that's what they told me. So I sharply turned, gathered all my remaining strength, and started to shoot in that direction. I think I shot like 6-7 times, and then another thought crossed my mind. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm gonna completely uncover myself, and the chances to stay alive will be closer to 0. So I threw my machine gun to the ground and started to run like crazy towards that road. I closed my eyes and ran as fast as I could. I ended up in the midst of buildings and thought, I'm in a safe place now. I thought, now I'm safe. But some 15 meters away from me, some guy with an assault rifle jumps out of nowhere. He's pointing his gun at me, and it seemed like he was aiming right in my head. And he yelled at me, tell me the password. Tell me the password. Well, of course, he was using curse words during that conversation and so on. And, but I was embarrassed because I had no idea whose side that guy was on. Why? Both our soldiers and Russians were speaking Russian, and this language was spoken everywhere, just everywhere in that area. And I remembered, by the way, that we had blue tape tied around our hands so that when in a situation like that, we may see who's the enemy. That guy didn't have one, and plus his uniform was really dirty. I had no idea who I was talking to. One thing I knew for sure, if I make a move, he's gonna kill me. So I'm standing there and trying to recall that password. My head was aching badly. I wanted to drink water. My ears barely heard. So in my mind, I began to talk to God, asking Him to remind me of that password. Of course, if it's not the Ukrainian soldier, the moment I tell him the password, he's gonna shoot at me. So this is the moment where my life is decided. Basically, for you to understand, this guy could kill me right away without even asking the password. Usually soldiers can get really scared when they see a guy like me coming from nowhere, so they could kill me because of lack of emotional control. And there were stories when soldiers killed each other. And the next moment I got a phrase in my mind and I cried it to that guy right away. The password was basically a phrase consisting of 2 proper names, Donetsk, Truskovets. So I cried that and see the guys lowering the gun and telling me to follow him. I followed him and ended up in some basement. They gave me some water, took me to another basement, and then they successfully evacuated me to a safe location. After that situation, my commander, who was a non-believer before, believed in God and said that God definitely came down to save my life. He said that this guy had coverage where it would never ever be. And since then, the commander allowed all our guys to take cell phones on military operations, but make sure they clean the content of their devices, for security purposes. I know that all the things that I shared with you today may sound a little fantastic, and some people may not understand it, but that's exactly what I've been through, and God saved my life. The chances to survive were extremely low. Similar conditions, soldiers from both sides could definitely die. Like hundreds of soldiers can die every day because they end up somewhere completely alone. However, I managed to get out of that situation because God showed me the way out. I thank the Lord for saving me from that hell, and I'm confident that if He did that, then probably my mission on this earth is far from complete. So I want to glorify His name again and again, and I thank you, dear brothers and sisters, for praying for Ukraine, for our country. All the glory to Jesus Christ.
Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to this moving story. And it's our prayer that God touch your heart, and perhaps you would like to become involved with what we are doing here in helping people through the churches. By empowering Ukrainian pastors, we can do so much. God bless you.
God bless you.